Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. This is episode 236. This week, we have Cash Me Outside. The Vineyard is muy bueno. The big cat debate, and Jessica's week in court. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my partner in this endeavor, writer, journalist, owner of the GeorgiaVirtue.com, and dog mom, Jessica Salaji.
Hi, Dave. I'm the Jessica that you referenced in Jessica's Week in Court.
Oh, are you?
Yes, just want to make that clear.
There's only room for one Jessica in my life.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I've got two women in my life, and neither one of them is really happy with me. I mean, I wear on both your nerves.
Yeah, that's probably true. How was your week?
Well, I'm down in Brunswick right now, so if the audio sounds a little hanky, I'm recording from the La Quinta in Brunswick because I've got a project going on down here. And I told you in our private chat, when I travel with Connie, it's literally the Ritz or the Waldorf or someplace like that. I'm coming down to Brunswick to go to work. She's like, "Oh, the La Quinta's good for you."
Well, it's centrally located. You couldn't exactly be on Sea Island.
Yeah, I'm gonna go stay over on St. Simon's or something like that. No. If she came down with me, that'd be one thing. I'd put the crew up somewhere, and Connie and I would stay somewhere else because I could commute and let her have a couple of days on the beach. But it didn't work out that way. I'm down here to work, and hopefully head back up as we record tomorrow, and at least get one day of the weekend with the boss lady.
Yeah.
So how are things in Statesboro? Lots of gnats and heat?
Not so many gnats. It's love bug season down here, which if you know what love bugs are, you'd rather have the gnats. Yeah, it's brutal. But it's almost over. We've had a couple cool mornings, which means that winter is coming. Yeah, by cool, you mean 78, 80. I do, because it's like you go outside and you're like, wow, I'm not taking a deep breath in to suffocate. Yeah, at home, we had a couple mornings that were in the mid-60s. Fall, it's 60 degrees. I'm going to go get a sweater and go get a pumpkin spice latte. And then by noon, it's like, God, it's hot. It's 80 degrees or 85 degrees. I'm not going to go that far, but... Well, you're not a big pumpkin spice fan, are you? Not at all, but I'm not going to go get my sweaters and stuff. I mean, it's got to be, like, brisk before I will consider it fall. Before you break out the sweater? Yeah. Well, even, growing up in South Florida, if it was in the mid-50s, that was when we broke out our coats. And even then, by lunchtime, you had to take your jacket off because by lunchtime it was 80 degrees. Yeah. That was my idea of cold, was waking up it was 50. If you could actually see your breath, I was like, oh my God, it's winter. Brr. Yeah, exactly. Bundle up. So, the world is a giant piece of crap, Jessica. Yeah, this is your story. I don't know what you're reading that found you with this headline, but... Yeah, the Cash Me Outside girl is on OnlyFans, and she's about to speak at Oxford. And for those who don't recall, she was on the Dr. Phil show as a unruly teen with horrible diction and horrible vocabulary. And people were yelling at her, and I guess she was trying to tell them, catch me outside, how about that? Which, of course, came out, catch me outside, how about that? Well, I mean, even catch me outside, how about that is not legit. No, but at least it's English. Yeah, so when I was putting the outline together, I was looking at the story, and, I mean, obviously I remember this, and I remember the clips that came out, but, like... It really speaks to the power of the internet generally because, I mean, I don't know a ton of people who watch Dr. Phil. No, unless you're in a doctor's waiting room or something like that.
Right.
And you have no control of the TV, you may see it. I despise Dr. Phil.
You do?
I do.
Why?
Because it is dumpster psychology. Mm-hmm. It just absolutely awful. It's the same thing. I despise the show The Doctors that Dr. Oz was on. Mm-hmm. Hate that show. The only time I see it again is if I'm waiting for an appointment somewhere and it happens to be on TV. I despise that show. Again, it's not medical advice. It's horrible. It's okay. Here comes the misogynist. It is for mush-brained, stay-at-home wives that are consuming this media. That's why it's on at 2:00 in the afternoon.
It's not at 2:00.
When's it on?
Well, I don't know. I know that it used when I was like younger and it first came. It was right after Oprah, and Oprah was at 4.
Whatever.
Because Oprah competed with Judge Judy.
Judge Judith Shineland.
Yes. Miss $900,000 a season.
Yeah, look, I don't watch Judge Judy. I don't watch the.
I love Judge Judy.
Oh, I like Shineland personally. I just don't consume the media. It's just not my cup of tea. But then again, what I watch you wouldn't find amusing either, because I watch 50-year-old episodes of Bonanza and MASH. Mm-hmm.
But back to Cash Me Outside.
Yeah, so she goes by the handle of Bad Baby, BHAD, BHABIE.
Yes, because now she's an OnlyFans sensation.
Yeah, and she has a paywall that apparently if you want to see more of her, that you can go through the paywall to do that. She bought like a $4 million house in Florida cash.
I want to talk crap about her, but I don't live in a $4 million house, and I'm not speaking at Oxford.
I can't even imagine what these students at Oxford are going to get out of this, other than the confirmation that Americans are idiots.
It's going to be terrible.
I mean, unless she has worked on her diction and look, this is done.
For OnlyFans, I doubt she's been working on her diction.
Well, hey, maybe change the definition of that word.
Or the spelling. But I mean, the girl is not. I don't think Dr. Phil got her on the straight and narrow.
No, but there is no hope for society. If this is what is speaking at Oxford, I say people all the time, well, he's no Rhodes Scholar. Well, apparently she is, because she's going to give a speech abroad. How does this person generate that much money? I mean, look, there is porn out there, right? There's like real porn, like with a director and lights and everything else. That's you can accidentally stumble on because the internet's such a filthy place. If that's your thing, why the hell would you? And I have no idea what she charges. I have no idea. But
all I know is that, like, from watching, we've talked about it on the show before, where I watched that Netflix documentary on people who have made a career out of OnlyFans, and it's basically like a menu where you go and you select what you want. I mean, she can get $20 from someone to receive a photo, but she's not some like Heidi Klum. No,
she's not particularly attractive. I mean, she's not offensive looking. She doesn't have a thumb growing on her forehead or anything. I mean,
she's kind of offensive looking. Look at her freaking nails.
Yeah, the nails are bad. The nails are bad. That they look infected. Like Like, look like they're growing out of the finger, not like they're not. Yeah, it's bad. This is a Daily Wire article, but it's she.
And in the photo for the Oxford announcement, she's wearing like a hoodie. Like you couldn't even like, I don't know, find a nice polo or a sweater or something to just not look like you crawled out of the.
Yeah, look, I don't know.
The presentation is crap.
I'm not banging on her because, again, I didn't buy a $4 million house cash. Mm-hmm. No one's paying me to get naked in front of the camera. I mean, and for my ability to use the English language has not netted me millions of dollars and millions of dollars a year. So,
but the invitation said it would be an honor to welcome you to continue in this fine tradition. And she's going to be with people like Ronald Reagan, Nixon, Carter, Bill Clinton, Queen Elizabeth, the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, Malcolm X. Those are the people who have spoken in this capacity before.
Right. Who knows? Who knows? She may get up there and say, this is what I did to capitalize on the failure in society. But she was a kid that was running wild in the streets, and mom couldn't control her. And I'm wondering if mom and daughter didn't create this persona.
Well, and she posted on Instagram about this announcement. She said, if I did some dumb shit, all the blogs would post it, but we give away $1.7 million in scholarships and grants to start small businesses, and it's crickets. I'm just going to mind my business and do me. Go to BHADS scholarships now and get this money.
Yeah, she claims to have broken OnlyFans record by making $1 million in 6 hours.
I don't even know how.
I don't know that there's anything that a person can do that's in that capacity as far as getting naked or doing whatever acts for the camera. I don't know there's anything that you could even do in person that would be worth that kind of money. I mean, if you're going to take $1 million from me, at least marry me and stick it out a couple years and then take half. I mean, whatever. But it's awful. And she was on Dr. Phil at like 13 years old.
Yeah, in 2016.
Oh, God. So 6 years ago. So she's 19 now. She's barely old enough to show her butt on on camera, and now it's paying off for her. Look, I hope she goes to a wealth management strategist to help to take care of this and put it in a trust and take it away from her, because this cannot be sustained. There's just no damn way. The world's just, oh, God. So we have DeSantis and the migrants.
That's a pretty big story from last week.
It is. 50 of them, 2 flights from San Antonio. They were transported by the state of Florida under a program that was funded by legislation earlier this year. DeSantis said states like Massachusetts, New York, California will be better facilitate care of these individuals. I mean, look, I
like the quote, I don't like the activity.
Yeah, look, here's the thing. So they're going to the Vineyard. They're going to Martha's Vineyard. And that to me that's hilarious, and the memes that have been going around on it are fan-friggin-tastic.
Yeah, the memes are funny, but I really don't like. I don't think what he's doing is funny. I don't think what Abbott is doing is funny. I equate it to what we do here under wraps and pretend we don't, which is where a lot of cities and counties will bus homeless people to other communities so that they don't have to deal with them. It's basically the same thing. And, I mean,
it's weaponizing them. And it's
trafficking them.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's weaponizing them. It's saying, oh, yeah, you're going to keep electing Democrats? Here, why don't you have some of your own policy? Here. And, I get the frustration for, as far as Florida goes, I know that there are a lot of, the federal government was doing this, was taking them from the border and dumping them in these states. And the states are basically saying, no, we're not going to take care of them. They're not going to clog our schools and here, you guys take a few. So I don't know. I think the putting human beings as weapons is
ugly.
Not great. It is ugly. But I also am totally amused by these mayors and governors of these states that have been saying all along that no, this is great. This immigration is fantastic. We shouldn't build a wall. No, we shouldn't do anything with border security because they don't have to deal with it. California has to deal with it. Arizona has to deal with it. Texas has to deal with it. All these the southwestern states have to deal with it, but New York doesn't. New York is insulated. So stick them on a bus, let them show up in New York. Stick them on a bus, let them show up in D.C.
Yeah,
so
the joke's kind of on them, though, because, like, in Martha's Vineyard, the community showed out big time and went and provided them food and shelter and...
Good.
Is it good, though? Because, like... that's not going to continue, so they're still going to end up on... the government dole, which is still going to have... that all comes from the same pot at the end of the day. I don't think it's really accomplishing anything, and we're using state dollars to do it, and I don't like it. I don't think it's witty. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's and there's already. I don't believe everything I read in the media, and I cautiously read accounts because you don't know what they're asking people when they answer these questions, but. If it didn't happen this time, which they're saying it did, but if it didn't, it's going to eventually if they continue doing this, and that is that they're leading people to different places on false pretenses, and that's not okay.
Well, I am all for immigration, and we need immigration. We need people in this country. Our birth rates have been going down.
They're shit.
Yeah, our birth rates are down, and look, I have no problem with immigrants. I think that we should have I won't say open border, but a policy that makes it easier to come to this country. And look, especially down where I am right now, where you live, and all the way over to Moultrie and places like that, they have to have immigrant labor. You are not going to get an American to go pick cotton. You're just not. I even had a friend who was looking for a job. I said, man, in Moultrie, they're looking for people to pick cotton. He said, I did that as a kid. I'm like, no, man, you're not dragging a bag around. You're on a combine. You're sitting in the air conditioning with stereo, and it's not that bad. But these communities have to have the labor. Same thing in California with their vineyards and their orange groves and things like that. They have to have this labor, have to have it. So I don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with just dumping mass amounts of humanity and then immediately putting them on the dole. Mm-hmm. A big cure to that is get rid of the dole.
Well, I agree. Very much so, but I just, you talk about looking like idiots and having this girl go to Oxford. How's the rest of the world looking at us just shuffling people around the country? Because they were talking about how some, from Florida or from Texas to Florida and then up to Martha's Vineyard. like, I don't think that's anything to be proud of. I don't think we're going to look back and be like, wow, that was, and also let's not forget that the basis of DeSantis and Abbott's actions are to score political points. It's not because they actually like believe that people will be better off there. They're just saying like, you want them, you can have them.
Oh yeah, it is absolutely political. Both of them are in election cycles, but you know, just like Georgia, they're in a gubernatorial election cycle. But there is something to be. There is a nuanced argument there that the federal government decides we're not going to enforce immigration law, so we're going to force all these communities in Texas to overload their schools, to have to put strains on their infrastructure, while the Northeast doesn't have to deal with it. So the point is there. And I'm not saying that it's right to weaponize human beings, but the point is valid that you're putting huge strain on the resources of border states.
Sure.
And look, even in Georgia, and this could be anecdotal, but I track the arrest records and all that stuff, and I've seen a steady increase in no license on person. And it's I play a game, and it's in my own head. When I see the mugshot come across and try to guess what the crime was. And if it's, a lot of times if it's Hispanic, first thing I think is no licencia. And you scroll through, and sure enough, no license on person. Mm-hmm. So we're still starting to see an uptick of that. And I know that some of the buses that the INS was doing was bringing in, we're going to Cartersville and areas around Georgia.
Yeah.
But that's the federal government doing it. And that's under the immigration service that's doing it. That's a lot different from Florida sending a plane to Texas to pick up immigrants and fly them to Martha's Vineyard. Is that really the best use of the taxpayers, the money for the taxpayers of the state of Florida?
I'm not convinced, but
now for a Texas point of view, it might be. Because they're on a border state to take a bus and dump them in New York or D.C. or wherever else to say get them off of our infrastructure and give them to somebody else. That may very well be the case. I think it's a totally different picture if you do this in January. You take people that don't have winter coats and live in a warm environment, dump them in D.C. or New York or Martha's Vineyard in the middle of January, when the high is going to be 30 degrees. I think it's a totally different picture. You take some people who don't have homes and don't have winter coats and aren't equipped to deal with the cold, and then dump them into a very cold environment. I think it would be a very different picture if this was done in January, but being done in September it makes for good memes because the Vineyard is still very nice this time of year. Mm-hmm. Not that I vacation in Martha's Vineyard. So, do we have big cats? Should I be worried if I take a walk in the morning, Jessica?
Yes.
I should?
Yes. So, we have a huge, ongoing debate across a lot of counties, from probably, Emmanuel County south, if you're on I-16, south and east, and then down to really the Georgia-Florida line, but in the area of probably 50 to 75 miles radius of where I am, people talk all the time. I'm not saying every week, but enough that you notice it. They talk about sightings of large cats like panthers or mountain lions, and they'll talk about they'll see attacks on screen porches or something, or on other stuff that left a mark that could not just be chalked up to a fox or a bobcat or a large dog. And then there's people who have said that they actually have seen them. And so it's an ongoing thing. And people, they say they catch them on game cameras. Well, DNR says, no, you don't. And it's like the most asinine thing I've ever heard of, because you're not talking, it's not like it's like this small group in Statesboro or like this conspiracy theorist, anti-environmental, like, I don't know. It's not like these tiny pockets of people. This is like widespread across areas where there's heavily wooded areas and forests where people say that they've seen animals. Like I remember I sat down, I can't remember which one it was, but I sat down with an advertiser one time and they told me about seeing a panther late at night on a busy path, what is now a busy road. It used to be 2 lanes. And
well,
they continuously say it's not true.
Yeah, I wish we had Lowe on this. He's
why? He loves the government.
He loves the government. First of all, yeah, if DNR said it was raining and I was soaking wet, I wouldn't believe him. I've had to deal with, on the federal level, as being a saltwater angler, with their hanky way of counting snapper, where if they're not on natural bottom, they don't exist, and there is no natural bottom in the northern Gulf of Mexico. So all those fish that are on artificial reefs don't exist. So therefore they're endangered. That's how their logic works. Mm-hmm. I will say I grew up in Florida. There are panthers in Florida, very, very few. But we know for a fact that they sometimes they don't know they're crossing state lines. They're chasing game. So we know that when they released some panthers in northern Florida, that at least one made its way, I think towards Statesboro or something like that. I mean, it was hundreds of miles inside the state of Georgia. And most of those cats have tracking collars on them.
Yeah, I'm 2 hours from the Florida line. And then they also said, I mean, what's so, like, this is why government is government and why you should never believe anything they tell you, because they made statements to the media just last week saying, no, we don't have cats here. We don't have large cats here. You're wrong. You've never seen them. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And then just last year, they put out a post on Facebook saying that about the history of these types of cats and how a panther from Florida was shot in Troup County, which is near freaking Alabama on the other side of the state. And they've said that they talked about how in 1993, Florida researchers released 19 panthers along the Florida-Georgia border as a reintroduction study, and that's the one that was one of those was captured in Statesboro. Now, 19 isn't that many, but I mean, I'm assuming they're all not the same gender. But like, it's not totally unreasonable to think that a panther mated with something else and created another large cat or some hybrid cat, or that they just mated together and made little baby panthers that are running. I mean, like, to suggest that the entire population is just idiots who are seeing things, it really makes me mad. Really makes me mad.
And some things are perspective. Like, have you ever seen a bobcat in the wild?
Yes.
They are big. Mm-hmm. I was shocked. First time I walked up on one. I was down at the beach. I was fishing, and I took Allie outside. It was 2:00 in the morning. Something she needed to go outside. So I took her outside, and she started, all her hair on her back started standing up. She started growling. Her head got real low, and she was growling. And I looked over and saw this bobcat. This damn bobcat had to be 60, 70 pounds. And she wanted to go after it. Like, you want no piece of that kitty cat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not the cat. Those aren't the cats you live with at home. You want no piece of that kitty cat. But, I was surprised how big it is. Could it be mistaken? Man, it'd be tough because bobcats are very distinctive looking. Obviously, they don't have much of a tail.
Well, and you're talking about people who, like, I mean, sure, there's people like me, but there's also a lot of people down here who are, like, avid outdoorsmen.
Right, yeah, this is not somebody from
We're not talking about Buckhead. Right. Like, yeah. These are people who have been at least familiar
It's not unreasonable. And look, from what I understand, and this is coming from Lowe, that panthers and cougars and mountain lions are essentially all the same cat. And they have different names based on the area. So yes, they could absolutely interbreed or something like that. But it's not unreasonable to think that it's possible. You know, we used to have buffalo in Georgia. Mm-hmm. You know, we had herds of buffalo in the southeast. It wasn't until they were hunted out into extinction in the east that they were only found out west. But so the environment. So we did have big cats in Georgia at one time. It's just a fact. We did.
And it wasn't that long ago. And to say like the DNR people are like, well, I've never seen one. Okay, well, DNR, we've got game wardens and because, they get money and their citations and their crimes and stuff. But like agents and officers, like there's not that many of them. And they're not everywhere.
I also
they don't just sit in. You don't see them. You know what? I've never seen a game warden or a DNR officer out in the wild either.
Oh, I sure as hell have.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's ridiculous to just say, like, we're saying there's no cats in Georgia, so there's no cats in Georgia.
You know, a better way of saying it would be unlikely, or it would be an outlier. It's nothing to worry about.
There's so little data that we don't even have any real statistics about it. Say something like that. Don't just tell people they're nuts.
Yeah, we have no evidence to support it, but it's not impossible. That's fine. You can't prove a negative anyway. You can't prove there aren't big cats in Georgia. You just can't. You can't prove what's not there. Because nothing, especially in nature, is absolute. Is it possible? Sure. Especially, again, where I'm sitting in Glenn County. I'm 30 minutes from the Florida line where I am. Is it unreasonable to think that big cats that are in Florida couldn't cross over to Georgia? They just cease to exist if they cross the state lines. It's not unreasonable to me to say that, especially in South Georgia, the border counties, it's not unreasonable for me to think that yes, a big cat could make it up here, especially if, with suburban sprawl in Florida starts pushing and taking more and more territory from them, they might extend to farmland in South Georgia. That's completely reasonable to me. Absolutely reasonable to me that it's a small group of them, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. You'd assume an even number so they could all be couples and married and happy kitty cats. I don't know, man. That's the thing. I don't know. And you and I can sit here and admit, we don't know. But for them to be able to go, stupid civilians. No, you didn't see a cat. It was a dog. Yeah, so. All right, this is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over thegeorgiavirtue.com. Jessica, what does Buddy Carter do for a living?
He's a pharmacist.
Okay.
Well, actually,
what did he
I'm
do
sorry,
last
hold
week?
on. He's actually a full-time, pretty much lifelong politician, but he has a hobby as a pharmacist where he makes some money.
Yes, he has a PharmD. Okay, yeah, he has the education to be a drug dealer, but he's actually a parasite feeding on the taxpayers' dollars up in Washington, D.C.
Correct.
Anyway, so he says marijuana legalization could pose a threat to the U.S. energy grid.
Yep, that's why he is our Mule of the Week. He and this other representative from Colorado, which is ironic, sent a letter to the energy secretary last week saying that marijuana cultivation alone accounts for 1% of the nationwide energy consumption, uses twice as much water as maize, soybeans, wheat, and wine grapes.
Okay. That's because the majority of marijuana is grown indoors and hydroponic. You know, there's a reason it's called hydroponic. The vast majority of, especially even, I don't even know if a single legal pot plant has been grown in Georgia yet, but it has to be grown indoors. It's not allowed to be grown outside. Plus, from my understanding, and I'm not a weed guy, but it's my understanding that you can better control the amount of THC by growing it indoors versus letting it grow outside in the dirt. Which is why it's done that way. But I find it very disingenuous that somebody who is in the drug industry or has spent his previous career in the pharmaceutical industry wants to block something that people make a lot of claims as an alternative to using chemicals to especially for nausea and anxiety and things like that, is use weed. And Buddy Carter can't make money if you can grow your own cure or your own treatment for your anxiety or your sleeplessness or whatever else. I don't care. I don't care if it's restless leg syndrome, whatever, that people find it useful. Sorry.
No, it's just like it's just this whole pendulum of politics too. Like suddenly alleged conservatives are worried about the freaking energy grid.
Yeah, and now he's an environmentalist.
And he's suggesting that there's going to be like rolling blackouts, like people will be living in the dark if they support. And also, what's totally disingenuous is the Senate bill. I mean, I think the Senate Democrat bill is the proposal that they've suggested is much more complicated than it should be, especially when we talk about having single issue legislation. But it's not a legalization bill. It would just remove it from the federal registry on the Controlled Substances Act, but then it would leave everything else up to the state. So it's not like if that passed, like I would venture to say, given that everything that's happened in the last decade already with marijuana and how slow some states have moved and how fast other ones would, if they remove it from the federal registry or the Federal Controlled Substance Act, it really wouldn't have much impact at all, other than you wouldn't have people in federal prisons for various drug offenses.
I'll tell you where it would make a huge difference, and that would be allowing people who own dispensaries in places like Colorado, California, Massachusetts to put their money in the bank. Because right now they can't. Part of when you go to open a business account, they ask, is any part of your business derived from the production or sale of marijuana? And that's because it's still federally illegal, and the banks don't want any part of it. So, and I know people who are invested in pot, and they get paid in cash or gold. In fact, there was a movement for a while for civil asset forfeiture for pulling people over, leaving Colorado, and having cash sniffing dogs.
Yeah, I believe our past president was a fan of that, one Donald Trump. But I mean,
hey, look, it's more hyperbole. It's reefer madness 2.0.
Well, he's just what my point about saying that about things not changing is that like the states have already pretty much drawn lines in the sand of where they are. Like Georgia's like, no, we don't want you to have any freedom, so you can only wait for us to grow it and give it to you in an oil, but we're not going to grow it and give it to you in oil. Other states are more progressive. I mean, that's not going to change with the feds. It's just not. It's not going to change. And Buddy Carter wants you to think you'll be living in the dark.
Yeah, but the other thing that it allows it to do is research in earnest for the benefits and the risks of using marijuana derived medications. So right now it's the research is limited because you have to deal with the fact that it's federally illegal. So removing it from the federal registry would allow these universities to do research in earnest as to how it affects different patients with different ailments. We know
Screw the universities. They are backed by the federal government. All their funding comes from the federal government at the end of the day.
So when it's federally illegal, they're limited on what they can do, or else they lose the money from Uncle Sugar.
They will still do that because of the FDA. They will still do that.
Maybe so. But I'm with you. It could be a one-page piece of legislation. The federal government doesn't have the authority with state sovereignty to tell Georgia you must make it legal. All the federal government can do is say you reschedule it as it is no longer federally illegal. I mean, just like we still have dry counties in places in this country. Alcohol is perfectly legal in the United States, but there are counties where it's not, where it's dry.
We didn't have liquor in Bullitt County until a couple months ago.
So they figured out that people are still drinking liquor. They just go outside the county to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, what it comes down to is they figured out they were losing tax dollars.
Correct.
Yeah, so yes, Buddy Carter's a jackass on this one for sure. Mm-hmm. It's just he's lying. He's straight up lying to you. He is lying.
It's not the first time he's done it either.
He doesn't give a damn about the electrical grid. If he did, he'd be standing in the way of electric cars, because that's the soak on. It's not growing pot. Pot isn't grown with incandescent lights anymore. It's all done with LEDs. Very little consumption of power on that. Very little on LEDs. The LED has changed so many industries, including photographers. If to do a shoot, the models would sweat to death because you had so many bulbs putting off all this heat. And now with LEDs, it's just not. It just doesn't have the power draw that it used to. And of course, that goes into what I do for a living, because when I size equipment for a commercial space, if it's all LEDs, I'm like, okay, well that's not putting off any heat, so we can take that out of the equation. But Buddy Carter's a jackass. He really is. I mean, he may get it for the quarter, and maybe in December we'll decide if he gets it for the year. So how was your week in court? Did you get acquitted?
Well, I wasn't arrested, so that's still a positive, a net positive here. But I don't know if you got to see the mess in Bullitt County last week, but my district attorney's office was just at it again. So basically, the 30-second elevator speech of this story is that back in 2019, a guy was driving in a pickup truck. He was with his girlfriend in the front seat and his friend in the back seat. His girlfriend was holding the phone. They're from a couple counties away, but not super familiar with Statesboro, driving on a busy 4-lane road. Missed their turn, turn around, missed their turn again, went to turn and make a U-turn in the middle of the road, which was totally illegal. And as he was turning to do it, he hit a motorcycle that was coming up over the hill and crashed into the side of his truck. The motorcyclist was killed. It's horrible, super tragic. They charged him with homicide by vehicle in the second degree, which is a misdemeanor in Georgia. We have VH1 and VH2. VH1 is when you've been doing something like driving under the influence or reckless driving because you've been driving
racing.
Excessive speeds. Something that is like, of course, a U-turn or texting while driving or something like that is deliberate, but like it is deliberately reckless to drive under the influence. Those are particularly egregious, and so that would make it a felony. So he was charged after a year-long investigation by the Georgia State Patrol. And it was not just like a trooper that did it. It was their specialized crash reconstruction team, which is like, that's all they do in the area. Each part of the state has their own team. 3 troopers and 1 lieutenant from that division made the recommendation to charge him with the misdemeanor. and the improper U-turn. A year later, like after they'd gotten back all the cell phone data, blood, done all the math on the turns and speeds and just all of it. So they charge him, and we found out like in the days after the death of the motorcycle rider that he was an off-duty Georgia Southern Police Department officer, which doesn't change anything to most people because he's still dead. He's still awful. It's still tragic. He still was 23 and is missing out on his whole life. But after he was charged in state court, because, if for the misdemeanor, it's $1,000 fine maximum with up to 12 months on probation and or in jail. Felony, it escalates from 3 years to 15 years. So we're talking about a massive swing in consequence. Like if you kill someone while you're driving, it's either 12 months probation or 15 years in prison. Like that's the range we're talking about. Well, somebody with some political power called the district attorney's office and just was outraged and that this was only going to be a misdemeanor. And our district attorney, Daphne Totten, decided that was a hill she was willing to die on. So she demanded that the solicitor at the time move it to state court from state court to superior court to make it a felony. She presented it to the grand jury, indicted him for a felony. The guy was arrested and booked again. And for the last 2 years, his attorney was trying to negotiate it back down because what they did was he was charged with a misdemeanor, vehicular homicide, and improper U-turn. And then when she presented it to the grand jury, the underlying charge was reckless driving. And she said that it was reckless to be making the U-turn when he killed the motorcycle rider, and therefore he was guilty of a felony. And we found out, his attorney made a really smart decision in that he asked for a bench trial because the question is whether or not the U-turn was reckless. And it's not just like if you think it's reckless, it's what the legal standard for reckless driving which we already explained. And so his attorney asked for the bench trial because a jury would not be able to, I don't think, separate the legal standard for reckless driving and the feelings about reckless driving. So we spent an entire day from 10 a.m. until 5:30 listening to evidence, grilling witnesses, hearing about reports. The poor family had to watch the video from a security camera. They had to watch it probably 50 times in court on Tuesday. All for the judge to declare, yes, it was a misdemeanor because he was driving 8 miles per hour at the time of the accident.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
What did the family want? I don't know if you talked to them or if you heard anything.
I did not talk to them. The rumor, and I have not confirmed this, and I think it's important that I say that, the rumor is that the person that called the district attorney was basically acting on behalf of the family in the sense that there was a consensus that there needed to be more accountability than a maximum of 12 months in jail.
But why ruin another young person's life?
That's exactly. And if it were me, if I were the person who was killed, I would not want somebody, especially for an accident like that. I mean, it's not an accident. It's a crash, and nothing was accidental. He made the decision to do it. But I would not want another life ruined in the pursuit of justice for me. That's not.
The other thing I found interesting, and I did track this, and I tracked it on the GeorgiaVirtue.com, was the witness when originally interviewed by GSP. Says he heard the motorcycle accelerating. He's a biker himself. This guy was a firefighter, I believe. Mm-hmm. Heard the bike accelerating and shifting gears as he approached the area where the young man was doing a U-turn. So the bike was, it was his thought when he was originally interviewed that the bike was the one who was speeding exceeding the speed limit, and maybe this guy just didn't see him or misjudged the motorcycle speed.
Well,
in court, he tells a different story. He says, no, he was going the same speed. And my observation on that was, before he found out the victim was also a first responder, was a police officer, he told the truth. When he finds out afterwards that it's a fellow brother, not only just a brother in biking circles, but also as first responders, that his memory changed to say that he was doing a constant speed, and the judge basically had to throw his statements out because they were conflicting. And this crash was 2019 originally. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the year-long investigation now is 2020, and now we're in COVID. So this is 3 years after. The judge had to throw it out of his consideration, because when it was freshest in his mind and unclouded by any other facts about who the victim is, he says the bike was accelerating and changing gears.
And the speed of so there wasn't a ton of focus on the speed. I mean, the defense attorney really did a good job, in my opinion, of being tasteful, because he went up there and said, look, Judge, this, when they started in his opening statement, he's like, we're not saying that this crash should not lead to the death of this motorcycle rider. We're just saying that it doesn't rise to the standard of a felony. And he was very deliberate in making sure not to pretend that this was someone else's fault. And I really, after hearing all of it, I don't think that speed would have made a difference if he would have not been speeding, would he have died? I don't think that's the truth. What I think where speed comes into play is that, he looked, and motorcycles are difficult to see anyway sometimes if you're not giving the view your entire all of your attention and then some. But the speed that he was traveling, he looked, and then if he even hesitated a little bit and then turned, that would contribute to making the improper U-turn, but not being
Well, it's the acceleration that it's not the speed itself. It's the acceleration. If I look and you do it in half of a second. You look at something and you kind of judge how fast they're coming. Okay, I can make this turn. But if they're accelerating from the time that you glimpse, say, okay, he is, a quarter mile away from me, let me go ahead and execute this U-turn, and that person is accelerating instead of staying at constant speed, that kind of throws the driver's judgment off. And look, I've said this on many. I've said this about her too, about the DA down here. I believe that the government should have to dance with the girl that brought him. If you say that it's first degree, and that's the date that you want to bring to the dance, you better prove it, or they get off. I don't like this charging 5 different things on an indictment and go, all right, well, this is going to be a reader's choice. Choose your own adventure. On this one, so if it's not on the first degree, you can get to the second degree. With murder, it can be: is it felony murder? Is it this? Is it assault with a deadly weapon or aggravated assault? And so you send a jury back.
They do that
in this
to
case.
Force a plea.
I know they do that to force a plea, but they didn't even offer a plea on this one. But I believe that you should have to dance with the date that brought you. If you think something's murder, then you charge it murder, and if you fail to prove your case, they walk. We know this with I can't recall her name right now, the young lady Ashlyn Griffin. We found that out with her, that the jury doesn't understand the penalties. They just thought assault, she would walk free, and that they had to charge her with something because juries are stupid. Yes, this defense attorney was very strategic because he knew he had a legal argument, and the only argument that the DA's office had was emotional. So take the jury and get rid of it and talk lawyer to lawyer.
And the judge did a great job. I mean, he said he covered all the bases in his finishing, when he made his ruling, and obviously he wasn't sentenced then, but he was compassionate and sympathetic to the family, saying, this is awful, but this is the law, and this is what I am limited in doing, and I'm, I wish we had. I wish we were just way more focused on that, because I mean, talking about the lesser included, we see that all the time. I was looking at a verdict form from a rape trial recently where they found the person guilty of. I'm not certain that the top charge was rape, but they had two lesser included charges, and it was supposed to be rape or the lesser included, and they chose all of them. Like, you can't choose all of them. You can't, because it's the same act. And this happens all the time. And the DA's office, and not just here, this is a problem everywhere, that the DA's office banks on
coercion,
a lack of knowledge. And so then they can appeal to the most dangerous thing for a district attorney back there is somebody who knows the process or knows a little bit. You know,
I really do. I wish trials started with a day for the jurors in a class to understand the process, understand what the charges are, just the legal definitions. So at least they have fresh in their mind before they sit down and hear the testimony what these words mean. What they get is they get the interpretation of these two attorneys as to what they say the legal definitions are. Instead of having, what happened to Ashlyn Griffin is a great example of that. I thank God for this judge. Look, the kid never said he didn't do it, and I know the kid has paid more than he ever will doing 12 months probation, or even if he goes to jail. I guarantee you, a day doesn't go by that he doesn't look at his action that day and question himself. I mean, taking a human life, especially when it wasn't intentional, is horrible. I mean, I'm sure that kid's living in hell every day having to think about it. Well,
and the judge said. So, the witness, the lying witness, said something to the effect of, he was careless, and they play the recording of him talking to Georgia State Patrol, and he said that he was careless and it cost someone his life, and the kid who hit him was nodding, like he was acknowledging it, and then when the judge said, I'm reducing this is what it is. He's like, this is not a seal of approval for what has happened. I mean, I hope you will do better and be way more attentive in the future and all these things. And he was once again nodding. Like, no, he didn't sit there and just bawl and cry all day, but it's also been 3 years in his defense. I mean, I would hope he's come to terms with some of it and dealt with some of it, but
well, he's literally woken up 1,000 times since that day.
Mm-hmm.
Literally woken up 1,000 times, and I guarantee you, every morning when he wakes up, he looks himself in the mirror and he thinks about what happened that day.
Well, and they saw him, like they saw him roll across. I mean, that's a lot to digest for anyone.
And he was 20.
And yes, he was driving. He was 20. The motorcycle rider was 23. And the thing that I was so livid about, like, wasting all the time and resources, and I was livid about putting the defendant through this, and then after watching it all in court all day and watching this 7-second clip of this motorcycle coming up over the hill and slamming into the side of a truck. Like, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating when I say it was 50 times, because it was 7 seconds. So they showed it several times, and then someone had questions, so they'd slow it down. And the judge had questions, so they slow it down and they rewind it, or they'd ask someone to, like, one of the troopers to analyze it. And you're just like, this family is sitting there just in shambles, watching it over and over and hearing about it over and over. And all of that was done with Daphne Taut knowing full well that there was no leg to stand on except the hope of a bad attorney and a good jury, in favor of the state. And that was the hope. And this is the result. Like,
and look, this could happen to any of us.
Exactly right. Any of us could be sitting where that kid was sitting.
All of us have been frustrated after missing a turn a couple times, trying to find some road where the sign isn't clear or whatever, and make multiple U-turns and get frustrated and stuff like that. All of us have done that. all of us have been exactly where that kid's sitting, and it was by the grace of God that we didn't end up getting hit by a motorcycle like that.
Sure.
I know you don't like the word accident, but it was 100% accident. The motorcycle rider obviously didn't plan on hitting that vehicle, and obviously the kid didn't intend on being hit by a motorcycle. I don't know how. I don't know what a reckless U-turn looks like. I mean, was it a legal U-turn or illegal?
It was illegal. I mean, he inappropriately cut across lanes, but to say that it was reckless when he was going 8 miles an hour, I mean, I would consider a reckless U-turn being like 50.
Yeah, when you fishtail. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you balk the tires doing a U-turn, which I've done in my younger days. Yeah, that 8 miles an hour, and if I recall correctly, he allowed another vehicle out that was turning, so he was showing caution with another vehicle that was in the way of him completing his U-turn.
Yep.
So the facts of the case didn't support a felony for sure. I don't like political influence being used. I certainly don't like Totten. She's just a piece of work.
That's the kindest thing anyone's ever said about her.
Well, I don't want Eric to have to bleep us too much because we're recording kind of late. Jessica, as we're winding down, do you have closing thoughts?
Nope.
The only thing I have is there's a thing going across the Army for sure, and I know it's other branches as well, of these aging barracks. And these are like dorm rooms, most of them built in the 70s, with failing air conditioners and mold, and bad mold, to where nobody is helping these troops out. And this is, when I say kids, these are the people that live in barracks are typically what we call lower enlisted. These guys are E4 and below, typically somebody 18, 19, 20 years old before they make sergeant. It's right here. It's right in Hinesville at Fort Stewart is one of the prime places. Guys came back from a deployment in Eastern Europe, and all their belongings are ruined from mold. The air conditioners haven't worked properly in years. The humidity, the relative humidity inside is registering over 70 when it's suggested to be below 50 to avoid growth. These kids are being made to buy their own cleaning materials to try to fight the mold. And they're using bleach, which bleach has water in it. So as that water evaporates, it goes right back into the air and creates more humidity. And, as they say, you're constantly cleaning it. As soon as you wipe the mold down, a day later, it's growing back. And this is Fort Bragg, my alma mater. I did not have this problem when I was at Bragg. I had every other problem. At one point, I lived in old World War II barracks, and they had roaches and stuff, but we never had black mold growing on the doors and stuff. But this is something that do your research on it. But this is something that Congress can take care of. And seldom do I say call your congressman, but this is something that only Congress can address because the Army will not. The Army, any of the soldiers that were featured in the story that I read did it anonymously because you're not allowed to speak to the press. That's something you don't do. Mm-hmm. And there's picture evidence of mold growing on beds. These guys are, and this is something that I've tracked internally with veterans forums for a while. Is these guys are getting back and the doors won't even open on their barracks rooms because there's so much humidity. The doors have swollen. And walking in and it being uninhabitable. Fort Bragg actually declared several buildings uninhabitable, and they're putting soldiers in the on-post hotels, the visiting soldier housing, and putting them up there or giving them a housing allowance to go off-post to find housing because the barracks are so bad and so unhealthy. And you're talking about a group of people that, well, I mean, truthfully, we're not, when you're in the Army, you're not totally healthy because, you drink till 2 o'clock in the morning, but you get up at 5, then you get up again at 5 and go run. But, this is going to cost us huge on the back end, because just think about all the lawsuits. You can't turn on TV about hearing about Camp Lejeune water. Well, in 20 years, you're going to hear about Camp Stewart air and Fort Bragg air. Did you live in moldy barracks? You could be due compensation. All it's going to do is cost us down the road for not fixing or not building new housing facilities for these troops now. So there's my 2 cents on that. Not that it'll make any difference, because but these congressmen need to know what's going on. So, Jessica, thank you very much. Eric, our editor, big thanks to him. I want to give big thanks to everybody who put up with us for an hour and listened to us. We'll talk to you next week.
Catch me howling at the moon.